An extreme past from my life. First of all, I am not a murderer or a manslayer. Today I feel nothing but pity for these people. No. In my past there was a phase of excessive partying that lasted for many years in which I lived according to the life motto of sex, drugs and rock and roll, or to be more precise, party until I dropped and party until the doctor comes. In Germany, a guy like me is called a party animal, but be careful why attention. Quite simply, my excessive past should not serve as an example for anyone to emulate, because my actions were anything but exemplary for others. Why? Quite simply because my excesses have actually caused me, almost sinfully, to injure myself over a period of many years. My extreme parties were, I couldn't put it any other way, the behavior of an extremist, someone who sought the extreme in life, took his extreme self-experiences for granted, and finally embodied the extreme, something that became understandable. For example, we know that in the black scene, a scene of Satanists, sadists, goths, emos, etc., I had gained the reputation of being the strongest over the years in the cult club Roxy Club in Essen in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. I was actually the strongest man in the scene for many years. All the other guys were afraid and respected of me. These guys basically had no reason to be afraid because I never felt like hitting myself. My extreme aggression gave me air and space on the club's pentagram dance floor, a behavior that other guests encouraged, especially to want to see me in my show. Soon the following rule prevailed in the club: as soon as the track, I'm Broken, was played, all guests left the dance floor so that I could perform my ritual, my show alone on the pentagram, using Philip Hansen Anselmo's vocals as a shouter in vocals. Gestures and facial expressions were almost imitated too perfectly. I'm Broken was my alone time. The honor I received from the scene back then cannot be outweighed in fame and wealth to this day. The return from me was that I seemed to be quite entertaining to most of the guests. I can't explain it any other way. The Roxy Club, the period from 1997 to 2004. Here is the story. At the end of the last century, in the summer of 1993, the Roxy Club discotheque opened in the center of my hometown, the city of Essen. I was 18 years old at the time, so there was nothing stopping me from going to the club. When the Roxy Club opens its dark halls for the first time, I am the club's very first guest, accompanied by my girlfriend at the time. What an honor for me to have been the first guest ever. Between 1993 and 1997 I visited the Roxy regularly, usually accompanied by my partner. Going to the Roxy became a ritual for me, and almost no weekend went by without someone seeing me at the club. 4 years. The 4 years passed, and after I separated from my partner in heartbreak, I continued to perform there. I cut my long dark hair to a shaved bald head, usually dressed in U.S. Army outfits, and wore light, elastic sports shoes. Without meaning to, my outfit became one of my trademarks. In fact, in the years to come, I waged an internal battle against myself, a battle that resulted in a brutal war against my own existence. It was a battle that I had to lose due to poor self-discipline, lack of self-control and lack of knowledge and wisdom. At least at the beginning nothing looked like a dramatic defeat. On the contrary, due to the consistent separation from my partner due to my misconduct, a huge potential for negative feelings arose within me, through extreme self-condemnation, feelings that I tried to control myself by expressing grief, aggression, rage, anger and hatred mentally, physically and mentally through behavior that was abnormal in society primarily. As a singer and dancer every Friday and every Saturday for many years in the satanic cult discotheque in my city, not only did I scream my heart out countless times during those days, no, I also danced to heavy metal beats for hours, and that wasn't enough, because at that time it was normal for me to do it as often as I did. It was possible to be intoxicated. My drugs were marijuana and alcohol, a devilish mix. There were evenings when I went to the club already drunk, used up the €80 drinks card, and then roamed around the club stealing and drinking unsupervised beers. I regularly left the club early in the morning at 6 a.m. very drunk, so regular vomiting soon became the norm. It couldn't be left out. In my early years I acquired alcoholism as a first sad diagnosis, caused by the auto-aggressive lifestyle of mine, which was celebrated mercilessly without any consideration for my health. I will pay the price, as I will tell you. There was an extreme sadness in my mind at the time, and I felt unjustly humiliated by the separation. This combination, among other things, created an extremely large amount of negativity in me, which I balanced out by allowing aggression towards myself, but also aggression, which was expressed by me becoming a criminal at night and during the day by causing countless damage to property committed. I randomly hit or kicked objects that I encountered in public life, damaging these things like cars, garbage cans or signs, for example, without ever having to experience any legal consequences for this. I can only remember being reported once for damage to property, and that report came to nothing. If I didn't destroy any objects during the day, then I acted aggressively, especially towards people who trusted me, and it turned into arguments, quarrels and anger for which I was responsible. Back to the topic of Roxy, the party time on Fridays and Saturdays from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. served as an outlet for my anger and hatred towards myself. Now the following should be noted. The fact is that if I hadn't become system-wide ill from alcohol consumption at the time, in reality I would have a real chance of breaking into the big professional business as a musician. Why this? Around 1997-1998 I had what seemed to be my most successful time at the club. My behavior was unusual, and that's why it's not surprising that other people noticed me because of my appearance. One of these people was Mr. Torsten Gesell. Torsten was an active musician in the trio known in the scene as ISO Revolta, a trio of 3 musicians who could rightly claim to have rediscovered a niche in music, a musical combination of hard metal sound and elements from jazz music. They called this style jazzcore. I caught the eye of Torsten and the other 2 people from ISO Revolta because of their extremely extroverted musical gestures in the club. ISO Revolta was looking for a singer. The instruments already occupied were Torsten on drums, Christian on bass and Christian on guitar. What was missing was the singer. In any case, later in the evening, a young woman spoke to me, and we started talking. She wanted to introduce me to her brother Torsten. He plays drums and is interested in me as the singer in his band. I agreed. She led me through the dense crowd to a slim, tall young man who was standing in the lower room of the discotheque accompanied by 2 other men, and who seemed to be waiting to speak to me. Torsten's sister introduced me to her brother. Unfortunately, I don't remember the following conversation. In any case, we decided to meet a week later for an audition in the Margarethi HHE Music Bunker in the south of Essen. He asked me to pick me up in the car. We exchanged our phone numbers, handwritten at the time. Well, the days passed and finally the day of our first joint action came. Torsten picked me up in his car as agreed, and we drove to the bunker. Torsten led the way. I followed him through the barren corridors of the building from the Second World War into the band's rehearsal room, where Christian and Christian were apparently already waiting for me. The room wasn't big, but it was enough for the 3 musicians. I was welcomed by everyone. The most important banalities were exchanged and then we got to the point quite quickly. I should listen to what kind of music was played here in order to decide whether I could imagine myself as the singer of the band. Okay, the electric musical instruments and the corresponding equipment were switched on. I immediately felt that a good amount of volume would now affect me, and I sat down cross-legged on the floor in the middle of the 3 musicians. The instruments were tuned extremely briefly. It began. Torsten counted the first track by hitting his sticks. I was excited. I probably sensed intuitively that there were 3 musicians playing here, all of them mastering their own musical instruments. Later I will appropriately call this skill virtuosity. They played 3 or 4 tracks one after the other. I had a feeling that I was dealing with a band that had powerful potential. The foreplay came to an end. We sat down together, and the attention turned to me, which made me a little uncomfortable. How did you find it? They wanted to know from me. Still visibly touched and excited by the sound, I said something like, "That's brilliant. I'm thrilled. Your sound is great and you all play like real professionals. I would be happy if I could sing with you." The guitarist said something. The bassist exercised restraint, but the drummer replied, "If you like it, you are in. Welcome to the club," or something like that. On this day I celebrated my valuable time with ISO Revolta, even in retrospect. From then on I met regularly with the trio to play music. My problem was that I didn't have the right amount of social skills to be able to fit in with the 3 friends. I think that was one reason why the ISO Revolta and Singer project did not get off to a constructive start, but it was certainly not the main reason for it. We spent perhaps a few months together trying to achieve a musical sound for the band with me and my voice, but this noble endeavor could not help but fail. Why did it fail? Simply put, it failed because of my drinking habits. Simply said. Now I drank a lot of alcohol, especially in our rehearsals. I'm talking about a bottle of liquor within 2 to 3 hours. To be precise, I was always tight to the top and not capable of any musical direction. I failed because I didn't know my limits. When heavily intoxicated, every normal person is incapable of performing well at work, and unfortunately and regrettably I didn't notice it myself. Why not? Because I was addicted to my alcohol level. Because I couldn't think properly about what I had to do to provide the band and myself with a professional basis. All in all, because of my debt. The band had no realistic chance of producing music professionally. I denied us this chance through excessive drugs and alcohol. I, an idiot, missed an absolutely great opportunity to work in the professional business due to an addiction. Right now I'm angry about my insanity, my incompetence and my stupidity, but if I follow the teachings of the highest teacher in Buddhism, the Buddha, then my anger today doesn't help me at all. On the contrary, contact with the band finally broke off and I returned to the hellish goings-on in the club, celebrated my party excesses there until 2004, and finally paid the price for my sin. I am becoming seriously ill with my physical health and mentally and emotionally ill with the psychiatric diagnosis of psychosis. In English, psychosis belongs to the category of mental disorders. Personally, I think I know that in psychosis it is not the soul that becomes ill, because the soul itself is a gift, is a kind of divine gift, but I think it is the body and the mind that become ill. When I reflect on my time since my first psychiatric treatment, I come to exactly this conclusion. Body and mind become ill, and yes, perhaps now it is possible for our divine soul to become ill, but I don't want to declare that to be correct. I hope that you, ladies and gentlemen, can get an idea of what I call a life in the extreme. Don't copy it, people, the price will be high. Thank you for listening, and over.